So once again, hi everyone, my name is Susan and I have been teaching IELTS for 20 years and welcome to Future Ed. We are the official British Council IELTS Test Centre, and we are, due to COVID, we are getting some online courses up and running so that you can study from the comfort of your own home. And if you can't make it in 4 lessons, then at least you'll be able to pick up that lesson at another time after we've loaded it. Good. So if you are new to the speaking test, if you haven't done it before, if you don't know very much about it, this is the introductory course for you. So we're going to cover tonight a little bit about what do I need to know about the speaking test, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. So you're welcome to take notes or take screenshots. So first of all, how long is my speaking test? Okay. The speaking test will take 11 to 14 minutes altogether. So you only have this short time to show the examiner everything that you know. So you've really got to prepare your speaking test and make sure you pack it full of the things that are going to get you the marks, and because that's all the time you'll have to display your level of English. Have a look what to do in the speaking test. Well, you will have an interview with an IELTS examiner. They are highly experienced and they are highly trained. So you're in the best possible hands. Okay. During the speaking test, your answer will be recorded. And this is important for you, okay? Because what will happen is there will be quality checks, random quality checks on the recorded speaking. And that means that another experienced, well-trained IELTS examiner will listen to your speaking test and double-check the marks that you've been given. So this is good for you, and it's also good for your speaking examiner to help them keep on track so that we are able to have a test that's fair for everybody right across the globe. Okay. So your speaking test will be divided into 3 parts. And in these 3 parts, the examiner will ask you questions. You will have to give a short talk, and you will also have a short discussion. So let's look more at each part. How is my speaking marked? Now, each part is equally important. The examiner is going to give you 4 different marks. 1 mark for fluency. So how fluent are you? Is your speaking easy to understand? Do you wonder and do you forget the question and go blank? Do you get lost for words like I do sometimes? Do you sometimes speak too fast and then the examiner can't understand anything you're saying? So how fluent we are is going to help me get a good mark for fluency. It's important that you can use a good range of vocabulary, and I like to call this topic-specific vocabulary. So for all the different general topics we have, I suggest you build up a bank of vocabulary and put it all in a book, and then when you come along on the day to do your test and you have some time to wait, or perhaps if you're traveling to work and back on the bus or the train, you can have this book with you and you can revise your vocabulary. Cambridge University tell us that we need to see a word, one new word, 16 times before we remember it. So the more I can put in my vocabulary book and the more I can revise it again and again, the stronger my vocabulary will be. The third mark that the examiner gives me is for my grammar. How accurate is my grammar? Now this is really important, especially at those high levels. If you want to get a level 7 or 7.5, then you need to have quite a high level of accuracy. Of course, this applies to your writing as well. So the more accurate you are, the better your score is going to be. And then the fourth mark the examiner will give me is for my pronunciation. Okay. Am I easy to understand? Am I pronouncing my words clearly? And am I pronouncing them correctly? Good. So the examiner will give me 4 marks, add them up and divide by 4, and that will give me my speaking score. So over the point of the course, we are going to work on strategies for each one of these marks. See if we can help you to improve each of these marks. Okay, so the speaking test is divided into 3 parts. The examiner will ask me questions and I will need to answer or talk. Okay. So part 1 is just a general introduction, and she's going to ask me all the usual general questions that we might ask somebody if we're getting to know them. Okay. Now this part is designed to help me overcome my nerves, because of course I'm doing a speaking test, but if I'm nervous, I can't speak. So this little part is easy. It's easy questions, and it's about myself and things I know about and things I talk about all the time. So we're looking at questions like, are you working or are you studying at the moment? We're looking at questions about things like, tell me about your hometown. Okay, do you like living in your hometown? Is it very different to the town you're living in now? So simple, easy questions that we all talk about all the time. Then in speaking part 2, we have to give us a 2-minute talk on a given subject. And that's a little bit more challenging because it's perhaps a little bit unnatural for us to just speak for 2 minutes. But I have some strategies that I'll show you in speaking part 2 to help make this easier for you and to help make it more natural. Okay, good. In speaking part 3, you will have a short discussion with the examiner. And the topic for part 3 is based on the same subject as you were given in your topic card for part 2. So if you have to talk about your town and your city and compare cities perhaps, in your part 3 there would be a more general discussion about the advantages and disadvantages of living in a big city. Or for example, what are some of the problems of living in a big city and how can we solve them? So it's going to be a more academic discussion. Part 3 is very much like your writing part 2. So we can use many of the same functions and the same language and the same ideas in both our speaking part 3, and in our writing part 2. Okay, good. So let's have a look. What do I have to do in speaking part 1? Well, I've covered a little bit of this, and here we could be asked to talk about ourselves, to talk about yourself. And there are those questions. Are you working or studying? What is your job? Do you like the place that you work? Do you have to work on weekends as well? So those sort of questions. You may be asked to talk about your country. Where is your hometown? What is your hometown like? Or perhaps even your interests. What do you do in your leisure time? Do you play sport? Are you playing sport now? And there's a whole range of topics. I think they're on the next slide. Let's have a look. And even more. There they are. So here's a tip. Get to know the general topics that you might get in your speaking part 1. And then, once again, back to your vocabulary book. Build up a little bank of vocabulary, of expressions, so that you can revise it again and again, and you can use some interesting vocabulary and interesting expressions in answering these questions. So there you can see a wide range of topics. Maybe they'll ask you something about your childhood. Did you like school? Were you good at school? Talk about your daily routine. What do you usually do on the weekends? Sport we've mentioned. Pets. Do you have a family pet? Again, family or friends. Do you live with your family? Do you live with friends? Leisure time and activities, weather, transport, and a long list of other topics. And I'm going to arrange a free download that you will be able to download with topic questions and also with questions that you can practice. And it's a good idea to ask somebody if they would ask you these questions so that you can practice speaking. So here are some general tips. How can I prepare for the speaking part 1? And as I mentioned, you can collect your own ideas on all of these general topics, gather and learn topic-specific vocabulary, put them in a book, learn these on the train or the bus, and also gather a list of general questions, and I'll download one for you. And as I mentioned, the other thing you can do is ask someone to ask you these questions so that you can practice. And you can actually time yourself. You perhaps want 10 seconds on a question. And you want to also practice extending your answer. So not just 1 or 2 words. Do you like your hometown? Yes. The examiner can't give you marks on yes or no. Or yes, I like it. So you want to be able to extend your answer, and perhaps you might give a reason or more information. Yes, I do like my hometown. I like it particularly because we live on the sea, so we have access to oceans and beaches. It's also a large town, and so we have a lot of amenities like the theatre and the ballet. It's an exciting town to live. So you're wanting to extend your information, add more information, and then the examiner can give you more marks. Good. Okay. So let's have a look. What do I have to do in speaking part 2? So this is the part where the examiner is going to give me a topic card. Give a 2-minute talk on a topic that she gives me. So I can't choose. Okay? But it's good that this is about your own personal experience. So something you know, something that's easy to talk about. You will have 1 minute to prepare, and the examiner will give you a pen and some paper so you can make some notes. On your topic card, you will be given the topic, and then there will be 4 parts that you will be asked to talk about. So here you're looking at perhaps 1 or 2 sentences on each part. And when you make your notes, it's a good idea to put down keywords against each part. So why does the card have 4 parts? Let's have a look. We'll get back to that. So how long does part 2 take altogether? That's going to take about 3 to 4 to 5 minutes. Okay, first you'll have 1 minute to prepare, then you'll talk for 2 minutes, and then the examiner is going to ask you a general question when you finish your talk. And that, again, you could extend to last for perhaps a minute. So you're looking at 3 to 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to give you an important trick, and we're going to have a look at the different parts, the 4 different parts. Okay. It's important that we always ask ourselves the right question, because I have the right answer. So for your speaking part 2, when you get your card, ask yourself, what is the examiner testing? Okay. And then you can prepare and you can practice. So this is the example of a card. And there we can see the 3 to 4 focus parts. So at the top, you'll be given a sentence. Describe a family member that you are close to. And you should say who this person is, what kind of person he or she is, say what or why you are close to this person, and talk about something you enjoyed doing with this person. Okay, so let's have a look at the different parts. So I'm going to ask, what is my topic? There's my first question. And obviously, my topic is a family member. So as I think family member, my brain, my subconscious brain is pulling up my file that's stored in my brain with all my family vocabulary. Let's have a look at what is the examiner testing. So ask yourself, what is my topic? And the other thing, what is the examiner testing? Now it's important to understand that the examiner is actually testing my grammar. She's listening for how accurate my grammar is. She's listening for the kind of functions and expressions that I can use. And so this vocabulary and my accuracy, we call it collocation. That's how we would say it as a native speaker. So for example, if you say to me, make a photo, I like to make photos. I know exactly what you mean, but it's not what a native speaker would say. So that's okay, that's fine for level 5, 5.5. But especially if you want to get up to your level 6.5, level 7, you're wanting to be using more native speaker collocation. So for example, in English we say take a photograph, take a photo, not make a photo or click a photo. Let's have a look at that part, who this person is. Okay, so what is the examiner testing? and what grammar is the examiner testing. So, first of all, I'm going to introduce the person. Say, I'm going to talk about my mother. Okay. Now, another way that I can introduce this is think very carefully about this first sentence. And here's a trick. What we can do is say something like, I've chosen to talk about my mother. Or, I've decided to talk about my mother. And why have I suggested a phrase like that? First of all, I'm using present perfect simple. I have chosen. I've chosen. And I've contracted I've chosen for my informal speaking. Now, present perfect simple is not an easy tense to use. It's not in most other languages. And so it's not an easy tense to use. But if I can put it in my first sentence where I can control it, and I've practiced it many times, wow, the examiner can hear that I've used present perfect simple. And that gives me my higher score. So listen to that sentence again and see what other grammar form have I included in that sentence that's going to get me a higher mark. So I've chosen to talk about my mother. And there I'm using my verb pattern. I've chosen to talk. So I've got two verbs in a row. I have chosen, verb plus infinitive. So in one simple sentence, I can include two grammar parts that are going to give me a higher score. Okay. So my next question is, who is this person? I can talk about, well, what does she do? She is a housewife. So always thinking about what tense I use, because very often my tense conveys my meaning. I could say, my mum's a housewife, but at the moment she's working for my father because her secretary has just had a baby. And I'm using my correct tense to convey my correct meaning. Normally, something that's long-term or permanent, she's a housewife. I use present simple. And then I just add a sentence, at the moment, she's working for my father. At the moment, there's my key word, and I'm using present simple continuous to talk about a temporary activity around now. So just in that introduction, I've shown the examiner that I can use present perfect simple, that I can use verb patterns, and that I can use the correct tense to talk about a permanent or long-term situation, and the correct tense to talk about a temporary situation around now. This is what your examiner is listening for. Let's have a look at the second part. What kind of person is she? And again, very quickly, what is the examiner testing? If I understand what the examiner is testing, then I can give the examiner what she wants, and that's what's going to give me the mark. So have a look at this word, what kind of person. Something that's very common is that we can be asked to describe personality. So my mother's kind, she's firm, she's a very loving mother, she's very competent, and I admire her a lot. So notice that that's the other thing that the examiner is testing. Number one, adjective to describe personality. And number 2, as soon as you see a topic card that says talk about someone, talk about a famous person, talk about someone who was good to you in your childhood, I want you to think, bing, third person singular. And this is one of the most difficult things to get accurate for any person learning to speak English, is that switching to third person singular. So what does he or she do? So the next one. Okay, so we describe personality. So she is, she goes, she likes, she wears, and putting that S on the end of my verb. The examiner's listening for that, and if I want to get a 7, I need to have that third person singular very accurate. Okay. Let's have a look at the next part of the question. Say why you are close to this person. And again, we ask ourselves, what is the examiner testing? And when I see the word why, I need to give a reason. So I'm saying, I'm close to my mother because she didn't work when I was growing up, and she spent an enormous amount of time with us. And now we have a lot in common. She's very kind and she's very accepting, and she doesn't judge me. And we have a very strong bond, and we spend a lot of time together. Let's have a look at part number 4. Talk about something you enjoyed doing with this person. And again, what is the examiner testing? Something you enjoyed. Okay, so I'm going to have to describe something, describe an event, describe an activity, and have a look at that enjoyed. My verb's so important, I'm going to need to talk about the past tense. So I'm going to tell a short story, I'm going to talk about a short activity, and I'm going to talk about it in the past tense. Now, at your level 5.5, you might just talk about we went, we used to go, we liked, we did. And in that sequence, I'm only using my past simple verb. But if I want to get that higher score, it's a really good idea to practice using our less common past tenses, like past continuous and past perfect. And then again, I need to make sure I'm using that third person singular. She said, I'm working in my past tense most of the time. So can you see how much the examiners are testing in a small topic card that's got 4 parts, a lot of grammar, a lot of functions. And so if I prepare, and what I like to do is when we do the course is prepare a number of these topics and work on a number of these topic cards. When I have a 12-week course, for example, we might do 1 or 2 of these every week. And I encourage my students to have their little book and to actually have each topic and each of the 4 parts on a page. And then next to that, in another coloured pen, next to each part, write exactly what the examiner is testing. And then beneath that, make key points of things you would talk about, key points with vocabulary that you'd like to remember or that you'd like to try and use. So let's have a look at some general tips for part 2. Buy some. So, how should I make notes? Okay, I only have 1 minute. And as you can see from the previous slide, I've given you a lot of things to consider. So at each point, how should I make notes? At each part, what's my topic? Part 1, what's the examiner testing? And make a note of that, the grammar point, third person singular, describe personality, and just using keywords. For example, kind, generous, competent, loving. Okay, so you can actually use this card, and I really would encourage you to actually refer to your notes, especially at that moment when you go blank. Oh my God, what am I going to talk to? What am I going to talk about? And just go straight back and refer to your card. It's quite okay to do that. This is a very spontaneous speech. You haven't had time to practice it. So the examiner will expect you to refer to your card. It helps you with your nerves as well. If you get nervous, if you have a blank, just go back to your card. Also, if you don't speak for long enough, you can always go back to your card and you can go and add more information about any one or two of the parts. Good. So after 1 minute to prepare, you will then talk for 2 minutes, and remember to refer to your notes to guide you. Try to answer all the questions. Are you going to lose marks if you, for example, don't answer the last part? No. But it really helps if you can cover each part, because that displays a wider band of your vocabulary, like that last part, for example, using the past tense, and then possibly even being able to use the 3 different past tenses. That's going to get you a higher score, so especially for level 7. But again, if you practice and you're looking at 1 or 2 sentences for each part, and then you should have enough to talk about for your 2 minutes. But what happens if you finish before 2 minutes? Your examiner will just ask you to talk for a little bit longer. Can you tell me some more? Okay. Is it normal for the examiner to ask you to stop if you have spoken for 2 minutes? Yes, this is perfectly normal. Don't feel bad. Don't take it personally if she says, thank you, I'm going to stop you there now. That means you've spoken for your 2 minutes, and it means that she's heard enough to be able to give you accurate marks. Then usually, once you've finished your 2-minute talk, the examiner will ask you one question related to what you've spoken about in your topic card. And can you keep the topic card? No. Okay, this needs to be handed back to the examiner along with a piece of paper and of course the pen. Okay, so you go into the exam, into the test with nothing, and again you come out with nothing, just your passport. Okay, so let's have a look at speaking part 3. And I'm not going to cover this in a huge amount of depth. This is a short discussion in which you talk generally about a topic and give your opinions. And it's useful that this topic is the same topic as the topic that was on your topic card. So you've already spoken about this topic from a personal point of view or from a subjective point of view. But when you come to speaking part 3, now you're going to talk from a more general point of view, and you're going to talk more objectively. So a little bit more like how you would talk at university if you were in a tutorial, for example. And your speaking part 3 is very like part. So we can use many of the same functions and phrases and language, because when I'm going to speak, I'm still going to give a main idea, and I'm going to support that main idea with an example or some more concrete evidence. And we'll work on this both in the writing course and we'll work on it in the speaking course, so that we're able to flesh out a good discussion, a good argument, so that we can persuade, we can put our point of view across. This takes a little bit more practice, and we'll be doing it both in the reading and the writing sections. So remember, you want to speak naturally, but a little bit more formally. So drop all that slang, no swearing. Good. Okay. So that's just a little bit about speaking part 1, speaking part 2, and speaking part 3. Become in future lessons. So once again, we hope to each week load a speaking lesson and work to build and cover all the important parts that will help you so you're fully prepared and you can get a better speaking score. Now, once again, it's a good idea to book a mock test to see what band score you can get before you pay the money for the full real test, because that's expensive. So have an idea of what level you're at and get an idea of what areas you need to improve. We can then advise you whether that could take a month or maybe 3 months, and we could advise you on a course to take. You could, if you wanted to, have some one-to-one lessons. You could even submit some writing and have a one-on-one with me, and I will mark your writing, and then we can discuss that and I can give you feedback. So you're welcome to contact our test centre and to select the best course for you, or to arrange a time to do a mock speaking test. So that's all tonight, and I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson. Cheers. Does anybody have any questions? Good. Hello Sandra, hoe gaan het? Any questions? Good. My pleasure, Tom. My pleasure. I've been teaching for 20 years and I've got so many really good lessons, and I'm so excited to have this opportunity to be able to present them to New Zealand, to students in New Zealand, and then to students in other countries too, Bangladesh, India. Once you're online, the world's your oyster. Pleasure, Deepika. Come and join us again. My pleasure, Sandra. I love it. It's a tough test, and I love helping students to do well in this. This is a test you do that's really important to you. It defines whether you immigrate or not. It defines whether you're going to study the course you want to at university or not. It's a really important test, and it's a tough one. Remember that it's a test of your level of English. So while we can give you tips and tricks, and while we can give you some strategies, and while we can practice, that's one half of it. The other half of it is that we simply have to have that level of English. And if we can't get the results, we can practice tips and tricks and strategies, but we also need to improve our level of English. So if you do have any questions, jot them down. You can flick them through to us. We're getting a Facebook page up and running, and we'll be able to connect there too. Good. And now it's probably getting to dinner time, so I'll say good night and cheers for now, and catch you in the next lesson. And thank you for bearing with us. This is new technology to all of us. We're just getting it all set up and running, and whilst I've been teaching at the board for many years, I have not taught online before. So this is a new experience for me too. Any feedback would be welcomed.